thank you everybody for joining us, and we do have lots of people still coming. We really enjoy doing this. As I say, it's lovely for me to be here in Canada, Kitchener, Ontario, and talking to Michael Palij, who is one of our best partners. He's a master of wine living in the UK, but he's an expert in Italian wines, and he found us this incredible rosé from Giovanna Tantini, who is there from, are you right next to Lake Garda, Giovanna? You're right there. Yeah, you're right in the Lake Garda region. So we get to talk to people in Italy, and I'm going to take this over to Michael and Giovanna, and they're going to talk about why we've made such a big deal about this wine on page 2 and 3 of the catalog. We've said it's our rosé of the year, and there's no question about that. And I'll leave it to you two to tell everybody why that's the case. Cheers.
Thank you, Michael, and hello, everybody. Pleasure to join you for this brown bag lunch. Obviously, here in the UK and Italy, we are a little past lunchtime, and it's a brown bag dinner, slightly early dinner. But welcome, everybody, and this is going to be a fantastic session. Giovanna is one of the most passionate producers that I have the pleasure to work with. And what we're going to do for the 20 minutes that we have together is go through Giovanna's history herself, the history of the estate, and then look a little bit about what makes Bardolino so special from a terroir perspective, what makes Corvina, the principal grape variety, so difficult to grow, and such a key partner in this project, really. And then obviously we're going to look at the winemaking, so how Giovanna makes her Chiaretto, and then do a quick tasting. And both Giovanna and I have, we're very fortunate, we both have a bottle of the wine with us. And I know that you don't, but you will do shortly. And I suppose if I were to sum up, one thing about Giovanna, that would be, the word I would use is passion. So ever since we met, more than a decade ago, I've been amazed by her determination, her passion, and I suppose in a way her stubbornness, in a nice sense. That is that kind of dedication to creating a product where there really no corners have been cut, there are no compromises, and kind of whatever it takes to make this great rosé that she crafts in Bardolino, that is the path that Giovanna will always take. And over the years, it's been such a pleasure to watch kind of also the popularity of this wine increase, and more people come to know Bardolino Chiaretto, because it's one of only 2 rosés in all of Italy that has its own appellation. And by far it is the oldest, and you can trace records back of rosé being made on the shores of Lake Garda many, many hundreds of years. So the other thing that's worth noting, and in fact where we're going to start our discussion, is that Giovanna is a lawyer by training. So Giovanna, perhaps you could start by just helping everybody understand how a lawyer became a winemaker.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It's a great pleasure to meet you. I'm Giovanna Tantini. Michael, thank you. My company was born 20 years ago when I decided to leave my job, a lawyer, to follow my dream to produce a great wine. I have always worked in the vineyard to learn as much as possible together with the farmers, from who I learned the fundamental. But for me, it's very important to work in the vineyard only by hand, no machine, no chemical. I am an artisan in my company. We are the artisan. When I decided to start, I was very young. It's very difficult, but I'm very passionate to make this denomination Bardolino and the Bardolino Chiaretto. In this moment, we wanted to talk about the rosé wine. This is my favorite wine because for this wine, I want you see my bottle. This is rosé. I want you see the color for this wine because it's a special color. During this 20 years ago, changed a lot this wine. In this moment, the color is very light because the typical grapes was Corvina grapes from Lake Garda, is the typical grapes, Corvina, Rondinella, and the Molinara. In this wine, there are Corvina, Rondinella, and Molinara. It's special, why? Because I pick it only by hand. I selected these grapes in the same vineyard where I selected the grapes for Bardolino, is the red wine. But I selected before 15 days the harvest of the Bardolino. The bunch is very bigger. I like to the harvest before 15 days because the acidity it's very important from this wine. For the characteristic is good for aperitif with the fish. You drink for aperitif with the fish, with the meat, white meat, with the rice, strawberry, because when you try, the nose is very fresh. There are strawberry, violet, and fruit, and it's very interesting. My wine, why? Because stay in the bottle until 2 years without a problem. You drink 2 years. Sorry, Michael, help me. 2 years.
Well, you can, I think what you want to say is that this wine has a lovely ability to age and there's no hurry to drink it.
Yes. It's lovely, fresh when you drink. For example, this vintage is 2012. It's good in this moment, but you drink in the same vintage 2 years ago is very interesting because you change the food. For example, in this moment, it's good for aperitif with the fish. 2 years ago is good with the cheese, with whole cheese, with different food, but it's very, very interesting.
Giovanna, one of the things that has always struck me about going and visiting you at your estate is how flat it is, and Italy is the complete opposite of France. So many vineyards in France are flat. I mean, if you think about Bordeaux, if you think about parts of Burgundy, parts of the Southern Rhone, they're all flat. And Italy is technically 85% hills or mountains. And your vineyards are really flat. And it might be worth just talking a little bit about the history of your very, very special terroir that you have in Bardolino, and geologically, how did that come to be?
Yes, I live in the northeast of Italy, close to Lake Garda. The climate is it's a particular climate for the vineyard because we are the Guyot vineyard, and is very interesting because the soil, for example, is a morainic soil, glacial soil, is very they drain a lot, and by an absolute level present the skeleton in the soil, in my soil. It's very interesting for the Corvina grapes, is a special soil for a good grapes, typical grapes. Is a good, you understand?
Yeah, so it's very free draining. So
yes,
it's
absolutely.
It's a gravel soil. And Bardolino is what we would say in English is the terminal moraine at the end of the glacier that carved out Lake Garda. So as the glacier came down and scooped out Lake Garda, when it stopped at the end, it had pushed this big mound of gravel sort of ahead of it. And it's that mound of gravel where we get Bardolino, and gravel, which we see in so many places around the world. If you think about Napa, if you think about most of the vineyards in New Zealand, parts of South Africa, but really we don't find that in Italy, except in a couple of places. And Bardolino is really blessed with this very, very free draining soil. And I noticed that you often talk about that soil as being a key influence in the quality of the Corvina which you grow there. Can you talk a little bit more about what does that gravel give to Corvina that makes your wine so special?
The most important work to create a typical wine with a strong identity is done in the vineyard. Absolutely, by making sure the timing in the pruning, for example, in the pruning or in the green management, it's correctly of this work is done with the carrot by hand. For example, when I started the harvest in Corvina grapes, for example, I selected a different bunch for the different wine. The soil, it's very important. For example, in this moment, rain a lot. Okay, we are the harvest. It's a good my soil because rain, but the water don't stay in the soil, but go down. It's gooder for my grapes because don't have a big problem. For example, this summer is very hot. For Corvina, it's very important. The leaves stay close to the bunch because the sun is very strong. Corvina is a very delicate grapes. It is important stay be close to the leaves. Nascoste dalle foglie, what is the name?
Hidden or shaded by the leaves. So you don't want the sun. You don't want the sun directly on the.
Not the sun directly, because the Corvina for me is similar of the woman. Is very delicate. Okay. Yes.
I agree with that, Michael. You agree?
No, I think I'm quite delicate. I think I'm quite a delicate plant. I don't like the sun.
The woman is not only strong, but inside is very delicate. It's the same of Corvina. Okay.
Good. Okay. So we've got this wonderful free draining soil, and just a couple of words there I might just translate. So when you were talking about skeletons in the soil, I think what you mean are fossils. And the green management, what we would call the summer pruning or green pruning, where we're tying up the leaves and we're shaping, that what we call the fruiting zone, so that we've got a sufficient number of leaves to photosynthesize, to ripen the grapes, but not too much. So it's that kind of leaf to fruit balance, which I know is really important for you.
It's a very, very important for me, like what you talk about this. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't understand the question very directly, sorry.
I didn't have a question. I was just
you confirm. Okay.
Yeah, you pay a lot of attention to getting that.
And
balance.
Neil, who's listening to us here and watching, he'd like to have a glass of this to go with his lunch. Any chance we can get some in Canada today? Probably not. But you definitely have to order yourself a case, Neil, and then when we reconvene next year, we'll all have this wine in front of us, and we can compare notes.
So we've looked a little bit at your own history, Giovanna. It would be interesting just for a few words about the estate, and because you didn't buy the estate, did you? You inherited that from your father.
Yes, because my father was a lawyer. Unfortunately, now is not present here. My grandfather was lawyer too. My sister was lawyer. I finished this story with my life because I decided my dream is very different. When I finished my university, I decided to study a new university with oenologist, agronomist, and business management. But I understand, for my father, when he decided, okay, Giovanna started with a new job, the vineyard was father's vineyard, but the cellar started with me, only myself. I was very young. I was 28 years old, and I woman in this situation. It's very difficult for me to start it, but it's I was very passionate. I decided to sorry, I don't know what is the word. My project, it's very clear for me. The denomination Bardolino, when I started, is not good in Italy, but was a very old denomination. I decided to demonstrate it's possible to make a fantastic Bardolino and make a fantastic rosé wine. When I started, it's a very different, Bardolino too, and the rosé wine. And my father was very happy when he understand this is my my good job. He like I make the vineyard, work in the vineyard. Because I drive the tractor. I like to drive the tractor. I go in the vineyard. I stay in the vineyard, not only manager, but I like to stay in the vineyard and decide it all.
Right. And Giovanna, it looks like Marie Soleil, who's on the call, she's a woman after my own heart. She wanted to go over those food pairings again. I remember when we talked earlier in the week, you were quite amazed by the strawberry risotto as a food pairing, which but you also had a long list of things that this particular wine would pair with. Do you mind saying those again?
I confirm with risotto with the strawberry, my rosé is super, because when you try my rosé in the nose, you understand the strawberry too, the fruit, the violet. And in the mouth too, it's the fruit. It's very long. The minerality is very interesting, because when you drink my rosé, clean the mouth, because you try the minerality from the soil. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so fish as well, sounds like that those characteristics
with the fish,
go very
absolutely
well
with the fish, with sushi food, with pizza is very nice. You drink with the pizza too, and it's a very it's possible to drink in the lunch without a problem. This you start with aperitif and you drink with the pasta. Is very nice pasta or white meat, fish. It's good because it's fresh, but it's a very red wine in the mouth. It's a light, but when you drink, is similar of a red wine.
Very good. And
yeah, I think the acidity is key here, and when matching food and wine, that the point that I always make is, you need to look at those key constituents in the wine, and whether that be alcohol or tannins or acidity or sugar. And here this wine has that lovely fruit character, but also that fresh acidity. And the freshest acidity for me is like the kind of the windscreen wiper, which just cleanses the palate, and then you're ready for more. So this is not a wine that overpowers the food. It just gently supports it. And that's the key to its versatility. And you see this in other high acid wines. So for example, if you're in Germany, and they'll put Riesling with, really heavy foods. And the reason why it works is the acidity. So acidity is key here to making that abbinamento. Abbinamento is the match in Italian. And it can be a match, that your tie matches your shirt. But normally it refers to food and wine. And that abbinamento is a key point about Italian cuisine. And obviously in Italy, very often those things have grown up together, the food and the wine. And here, Lake Garda is a source of amazing freshwater fish. And that's how I enjoy it, to be honest. There's a lot of restaurants, as you could imagine, around the shores of Lake Garda. It's a great tourist place. And if you've got those fresh fish, and this is just a wonderful, often fried actually is how they serve it. And it's a wonderful match for those. So yeah.
Lovely.
Giovanna, I'm just aware of the time, and I wanted to just ask you a couple more questions before we move on to the tasting. And I know Corvina is your great love, and could you just say, you know, a few words about Corvina and what it is about Corvina that you prize so highly?
So surprise. I don't
No,
know.
perché ti piace Corvina tanto?
Because Corvina is a very difficult grape to work, and I decided Corvina is the main grapes in all my wine. In my wine, the percentages Corvina was 18% normally, or 100%. I make my wine only with Corvina. For example, in the Rosé wine, there are 18%. Okay, is a lot. For example, in this harvest, I decided 90% because it is the typical grapes in my area. And for me, it's a very important make the typical grapes in my area, because only in my area is possible to make these grapes, not in the different soil. Okay, this is the. For me, Corvina, for example, I dedicated my grape, my daughter, my son, the wine. I decided to make, for example, 100% Corvina in the different situation. Fresh or old, I put in the barrel Corvina. I wanted to make in the different situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you're harvesting Corvina, I know that you're very selective, very rigorous about your harvest of Corvina. Can you tell everybody how you make this rosé? What's the wine making that you use?
I put okay, when started the harvest for the rosé, I went in the vineyard. I try the grapes. When the acidity is very nice, is good, I decided to pick it. I put in the chives 20 kilo, okay, only by hand. I put in the pressing with the dry ice because it's very important to make this wine a low temperature. When I finish the softening pressing with the dry ice at 5 degrees, I put in this tank and we clean the most before to start the fermentation. The fermentation lasts 20 days at 16 degrees. It's a very long fermentation because for the good nose tasting is important make a low temperature for the good tasting. Okay.
So you harvest all the grapes by hand.
Yeah.
You put them into the press.
Yes.
You put in dry ice to cool it.
Yes.
And then how long do you keep it in the press?
In the press stay 8 hours, 6-8 hours for the color. But I decided 5 hours, for example, in this harvest, because the Corvina is very fantastic. The color is super. I like light color for this wine because it's elegant color. Corvina don't have is not very strong color. It's a light color, Corvina. For me, Chiaretto, the name of this wine is Chiaretto. Chiaretto in Italian was light color, chiaro, Chiaretto. It's good for this wine. Okay, Corvina is the typical color, very light.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it, that it's the same origin as the word claret in Bordeaux, which we use now as a generic term for red Bordeaux. And of course, red Bordeaux is not claret
Yeah.
anymore. We still use that term. So this is the original, if you like, the original wine that uses the term Chiaretto. And
Chiaretto Rosé.
yeah, so it's interesting. I think it's probably worth just explaining to people that there are many other ways to make a rosé, and this is what we would call a direct pressing. So there's no skin contact in the tank. It's not a bled rosé where you would macerate the skins and then bleed off the must. This is just direct press. So all that color comes from the
skin stay only in the press. The skin stay only in the press. Absolutely. Yeah. After we put in the tank only the most without skin.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Important like this.
And then a long, slow fermentation. So I think I know I've waited long enough. So yes. I'm going to I'm going to have a glass of this. And everybody else can watch.
Just make us all feel bad, Michael. Sure.
Well, you can all watch with envy as we have a glass of wine, and frankly, it sucks to be you at the moment.
Yes, agreed.
I love the nose on this, and so here I'm going to do the kind of the wine tasting bit, but I love the freshness of that, and you've got this lovely. So it's just red fruit for me. So red currant. Strawberry, wild strawberry, red currant, pomegranate. It very much lives in that red fruit spectrum for me, Giovanna.
Absolutely, I confirm like this tasting. It's very strawberry. In violet, I try.
Violets, yeah. So there's a slight floral note, and on the palate. There's no tannins. There's just this freshness, this kind of palate cleansing acidity that we talked about earlier, that really embraces the mouth. You know, it hugs the mouth and provides this structure for this. And I think that's the key for me for this wine. This is 2020, and you've got that lovely freshness that I think makes it so versatile with food. The other thing I wanted to say with the food, which I know is not relevant for you won't take delivery of this wine until next spring, and it's going to be perfect for the summer. But rosé is always near and dear to my heart for those foods where you could go either with white or with red. So, and particularly I think about Christmas with that, where you've got, obviously turkey, but not everywhere in the world has turkey. But, you could have ham or goose or, at Christmas time, New Year's, they have cotechino in Italy. And I think with those foods, this kind of mix, it's a hybrid between white and red, is really so versatile with food. And I think oftentimes we pigeonhole wines for wine and food matching very much with the classic, white meat, white wine. And I just think it's so much more complex than that. And I teach wine and food matching all over the world. And the more I do that, the more I realize that the key to getting this right is to look at those structural components in the wine and to look at the key structural components in the food. And what I find in your Chiaretto is this wonderful versatility. I mean, it's not going to go with beef or lamb, but it will go with a lot of food.
Very nice. And Michael, Paul is asking about serving temperature, 6 degrees C.
To be honest, I took this out of the fridge a little while ago. And I think it's just right. So I would go 6 is fine, but I would go up to 9, 10 is perfect.
Great.
The colder it is, the more you suppress those aromas. Mm-hmm. So you want it chilled because I think that's a nice sensation in the mouth. But I think too cold and you lose part of the wine's charm.
Right. Marvelous. All right. Well, we've kept people a little longer, but I think it was well worth it. It was terrific to meet you, Giovanna, and I've met you a bunch of times. Michael, still good to meet you every now and then.
Well, thank you. I also wanted to say hi to my mum, who I saw that's joined this call. So hi, and I will see you in a couple of weeks when I'm over in Canada. And thanks, Mama. Nice to see you.
Oh, that's great. Well,
thank you so much. It's a very pleasure to stay with us, with you. Thank you for the situation.
It's our pleasure, and it's so nice to meet you, Giovanna, here, and we'll meet you in person one day, I'm sure. And what we have told you is that the wine is selling off the shelves like crazy. So we obviously, Opimian members are loving the idea of it, and we can't wait to be trying it ourselves. Thank you, Kim Chen, for running the board. And thank you all Opimian members for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.